Hey, it's your girl, Dr. J, with my mental health and wellness tip from my perspective. Listen, had a client who was sexually assaulted some years ago as a child. And so she shared with her mom recently about her experience. And so they came to the conclusion that this teenager was lying about what happened to her. Just as many people, when people tell you about a traumatic experience or some type of childhood adverse situation, and then they wait later years to tell you, or they are traumatic about it all of a sudden, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're telling you a lie. You see, there's this thing that's called defense mechanism. And so the defense mechanism, it is the thing that goes into play where people repress very difficult information, something that's horrific, something that they cannot imagine thinking about every day. So they repress it out of their conscious and it goes into their unconscious. A lot of times they go on and live a normal life and they're functioning, and something happens to them and it resurfaces and it causes the same type of traumatic effect on them currently as it did then. So let us remember that there's reason why people don't share their traumatic stories, or why you might say, well, why are you waiting to now to talk about that? Well, maybe some type of event, maybe something triggered it and now it has surfaced. And so again, it is the defense mechanism that takes that experience out of the conscious and moves it into the unconscious because it's too painful to deal with. Sigmund Freud, he was on something when he said that, the neurosis, the mental status, certain things happen that the brain and the mental status can't handle the stress or the anxiety or the shock of it. So it represses it. So again, before we say that someone is not telling the truth, when they bring us their stories from way past and they're traumatic and they're experiencing it and they're going through all of the traumatic emotions, then let's just consider that maybe that was it. Remember, there's a difference between repressing. You repress it as a defense mechanism because you can't stand to think about it. You can't deal with it, and it goes into your unconscious. When we suppress things, that's intentional. All of us, at some point, we've had something that happened and we didn't want to remember. It was intentional. We put it behind us. But that is totally different when someone has experienced something traumatic or they have been offended, where they repress it and it's for their own protection. And so now, everybody, here's the thing to consider. Everybody does not have what you call an acute distress. That means something happened. They immediately are traumatized by it and they have to deal with it. But there's other people who repress it because there's too much to deal with. In therapy, when that person come to us about an experience that they had from the past that is now traumatic for them, we try to help them deal with the here and now. We even use consult therapy or existential therapy, and with those we try to help them deal with what they're experiencing right now that the past has brought up. So before we accuse someone of not telling the truth, and I've seen this play out on social media, people can be very cruel and mean and say, why is the person lying? Why didn't you say anything then? I just told you. It's because that defense mechanism went into work. It was too much for them to deal with, too emotional. The mind and the body couldn't handle it, so it got repressed. But in time, it does come back up. And so rather than accusing them, you might want to say to the individual, how can I help you cope with this in the here and the now, that you might be able to move past that part of your life? Well, that's just my perspective on how to handle it from your girl, Dr. J.